On today's show, turnovers and poor defensive communication almost cost the Houston Rockets against the Toronto Raptors, but they were able to escape Canada with a win thanks to two surprising heroes off the bench. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop us a comment while you're there. Give me your thoughts from this Rockets win in Canada against the Raptors, or just do a drive-by, say go Rockets. It helps us out a ton. Also, be sure to subscribe to our new daily Locked On Rockets newsletter. Would sincerely appreciate that. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. Rockets get the 114-110 win against the Toronto Raptors, escaping Canada with the dub. And look, it wasn't pretty, but a win is a win. And the Rockets have had a lot of ugly wins this season, but this one's a little bit different than some of their other ugly wins because they didn't really stick true to a lot of their team principles. Like, the Rockets are a team that generally take really good care of the basketball. They didn't do that in this game. They're generally one of the best defenses in the NBA. They really didn't have that on display in this game because they gave up so many easy layups to the Raptors off of slipped screens and backdoor cuts and just little things that piled up. And thankfully, they were able to change the flow of this game courtesy of a couple heroes off of the Rockets bench. Shout out to Cam Whitmore and Jae'Sean Tate. More on them here in just a moment. But the turnovers, let's start there. The turnovers were killers in this one. The Rockets started out the game. They had 9 first quarter turnovers. They had 15 by halftime. That's 2 more than their season average of 13 a game. And they had that at halftime. The Raptors were floating on at around halftime. They had like 20 some odd points off of the Rockets' 15 turnovers. They finished the game with 21 total turnovers for 31 Raptors points. So the Rockets did clean up the turnover issue in the second half of the game. Not entirely. More on that in a second. But turnovers were definitely a big thing. Ime Udoka addressed it at halftime. A lot of it was just honestly really sloppy, careless play. Like the Rockets making lazy passes, telegraphing, where they were trying to get the basketball. And the Raptors players were just playing a little bit hungrier, a little bit tougher. And that's the issue that this Rockets team has faced at times this season. Sometimes when you have a scrappy, bad basketball team that hasn't won a lot of games, their only calling card is just playing harder than you. They play harder, they play faster, they're playing tougher because they don't exactly have a ton of talent or the top level talent to be able to win out this game or any level of like a scheme or a true identity to lean on to try and have certain win conditions met or whatever. They're just going out there and just trying to play hard. And the Raptors did that. To their credit, they were out there playing hard. They were the aggressors in this game, and the Rockets really didn't look like they were ready for the challenge, especially there in the first quarter. They finished the first quarter trailing by 11, 35-24. In fact, there was a point at the end of the first quarter where Ime just got completely fed up with the lineup that he had on the court. Now, to be fair, it was also time for some of these guys to get their rest, so I don't know how much of it was like his frustrations versus like, okay, he just wants a new look at, the 5 guys on the court. But near the end of the first quarter, he had a lineup of Fred, Jalen, Dillon, Amin, and Jock Landale out there. And then it was like another like blown defensive possession, whether it was like a slip or a backdoor cut for like an easy score at the rim, which was prevalent in the first half. Like Raptors were getting so many easy looks because of poor Rockets defensive communication. And then he came back out of the timeout with Reed Sheppard, Cam Whitmore, Jabari Smith Jr., Alperen Sengun, and he left him in Thompson on the floor. So some of that may have been traditional like substitution patterns. Some of it may have been he just wanted a fresh 5 on the court, 5 guys who were going to get after it like they're supposed to.
They're getting after it like they're supposed to.
I don't know completely what it was, but of those guys, Cam Whitmore did bring some energy, but really the true difference maker in this game didn't check in until a little bit later on, and that was Jae'Sean Tate. And Ime was asked after the game if he anticipated playing Cam Whitmore and Jae'Sean Tate as much as he did, and he pointed out to, I believe it was Jonathan Fagan of the Houston Chronicle, basically said, well, I was planning to use them a little bit with no Tari Eason, still no Tari Eason in the lineup for the Rockets, but he went to them earlier than expected because of the issues that the starters were kind of facing, and that he didn't kind of like the energy that those guys or that lineup was essentially playing with. And if there's one thing that Jae'Sean Tate can bring to the table, it's energy. You could see just how impactful he was in the game once he got checked in, his ability to be a defensive menace, to set good screens, to operate out of the short roll, make some little connective tissue kind of passes. At one point, he was basically playing like small ball 5 for the Rockets. At one point, he was playing point forward later in the game. He was doing whatever he needed to do out there, whatever Ime really asked of him with certain lineups. And he finished the game a plus 14. In his 15 minutes played. He and Cam Whitmore were truly the two difference makers. Jae'Sean Tate doing it on the defensive side of the floor, really hustling, really bodying up to the Raptors, helping communicate, kind of revitalizing that Rockets defense a little bit and getting them to play how we know that they traditionally like to play defensively. After giving up 35 points in the first quarter, they only gave up 22 in the second, 26 in the third, and then 27 in the final frame. So that's a lot more in line with the defense that we expect from this Rockets team. And then Cam Whitmore was a little bit of an offensive scoring punch off the Rockets bench when they needed it, got downhill, got to the rim, still had a couple lapses, a couple moments where especially on the defensive side, he had one where he kind of fell asleep defensively and gave up a wide open layup at the rim. And I thought, okay, here it is. Ime is going to pull him out of the game for that one. But he brought some necessary energy on the offensive side of the ball, including a monster alley-oop, just slam Whitmore dunk. It was great to see Air Whitmore taken off once again. It's been a while since he's been able to have impactful minutes in the Rockets rotation. So Ime Udoka trying to recreate Tari Eason in the aggregate a little bit between Cam Whitmore and Jae'Sean Tate. And those two guys, again, were the main difference makers in this Rockets team. Yes, Dillon Brooks led the team with 27. Jalen poured in 22. Sengun picked up his play after a really rough start on both sides of the court. He really picked it up in the second half. And so the Rockets starters did show up and start doing their job, but it really felt like the game needed, an injection of energy. Guys who really wanted to play and get after it. And Cam Whitmore and Jae'Sean Tate brought that in the first half for sure. Now, the turnovers didn't quite go away. They didn't go away completely. And the Rockets had some sloppy turnovers at the end of this game. Dillon Brooks had one. In fact, Mr. Canada himself, he took accountability for it after the fact. He had that pass that he was trying to rifle ahead and just threw it too hard, and it just went straight, flew straight out of bounds. So the Rockets did have some moments. They were basically trying to gift the Toronto Raptors a win. Despite how well they played to get back into it. They were down by as many as 16. They took control in that third quarter. Credit to Mr. Canada himself, Dillon Brooks, who had 13 points in that third quarter. But it came down to a final possession where the Raptors were only down 3 with 13.2 seconds left on the game clock. They were getting ready to inbound the ball and run whatever kind of play they were going to run. And who else but Jae'Sean Tate to save the day for the Rockets? He stepped up. He was able to get the deflection, knock the basketball off of Kelly Olynyk, and it was Rockets possession again. They came back down, knocked down a free throw, put the game out of arm's reach, and that was all she wrote. So the Rockets, it was not a pretty game. It was an ugly game. It was marred by turnovers and poor defensive communication, but the Rockets were able to find their way back. They were able to stick the landing in Toronto. They got back to their defensive principles. They got back to taking care of the basketball. They had some, significant offensive contributions from Dillon Brooks, from Jaylen Green, and they were able to escape Canada with a win. And that's how teams do it. Good teams find ways to win games. And credit to Ime Udoka for going to Jae'Sean Tate and Cam Whitmore in this one, trusting them and allowing them to make an impact. Coming up, I want to talk about Alperen Sengun, his slow start in this game, how he needs to get better at dealing with double teams. Got to talk about Mr. Canada himself, Dillon Brooks, and also Jabari Smith Jr., his defensive improvements as he continues to be an absolute rim deterrent. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Skylight Frames. Look, maybe you struggle with finding the perfect gift during the holiday season. Maybe gift giving isn't quite your love language and you're overthinking it, or you wind up with something disappointing, or maybe even nothing at all, right? Gift giving can be a little overwhelming. We've got the perfect gift for you. Skylight Frames is the touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will absolutely love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in just seconds. You can add new photos straight from your phone from anywhere. The touchscreen is a total game changer. It looks absolutely stunning in your home. They've got two different sizes to choose from. And look, it's ultimately better than just social media. Make your friends and loved ones a permanent part of your home. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NBA. That's skylightframe.com/NBA. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/NBA. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Man, as part of what made this game so ugly, they let rookie Jacoby Walter go off for 14 points in the first quarter of this game. He literally had every single Raptors point up to the point where Grady Dick finally went 1 for 2 at the free throw line, giving the Raptors 15 points. That was the first non-Jacoby Walter point scored in this game for Toronto. And that was like a little bit of like a ridiculous start to this game. He finished a career night for Jacoby Walter, 27 points, 9 of 18 shooting, 6 of 11 from downtown. He was nice in this game. Mr. Canada, though, Dillon Brooks on the Rockets side went point for point with the young rook. DB had 27 points, only on 6 of 12 shooting, 2 of 7 from downtown, but he lived at the free throw line in this game, 13 of 14 shooting at the foul line, to go along with 6 rebounds, a couple assists, 3 steals, did have 6 turnovers. God, the turnovers just up and down the lineup were brutal. Jabari had 3, Dillon had 6, Sengun had 5, Fred only had 1, but he didn't do much else. Jalen had a couple turnovers. Like, it was just so, and really the big three, the Rockets front court were playing some very unserious basketball throughout this game. It was a hard watch. But credit to DB for showing up offensively, for helping get it done when the Rockets really didn't have anybody else stepping up offensively. Again, Sengun was struggling in this game. A bit of a quiet night for Jabari, although 15 points on 4 of 9 is decent for him. Just wasn't getting, I guess, nearly as many looks as some of the other guys were. He only finished with 9 shot attempts in this game. Jalen had a big first quarter, had 9 points on 4 of 6 shooting, kind of a little bit quieter the rest of the way, but finished with 22 on 9 of 20, only 2 of 8 from downtown, but he was getting it done inside the paint. He was 7 of 12, I apologize, 7 of 12 shooting inside the arc, and he had some really strong drives in this game, some really tough finishes through contact. The refs weren't calling anything in this game. They were letting these two teams just fight it out. Guys were putting 2 hands on Alperen Sengun constantly on his post-ups. It made it really hard for him to get decent post positioning or to back down any defenders when he did get the ball. Jaylen Green was getting hacked on his way to the basket, and he gets one of the most unfavorable whistles in the entire NBA. And in this game in particular, he had multiple drives that probably should have or could have been and won opportunities, and ultimately didn't get whistled for any of them, only went to the free throw line 3 times. At one point, he drove, finished, and he was like shouting something. It was hard to tell whether he was like shouting at the Raptors bench or if he was like yelling at the ref or something, like saying that should have been an and one, but he was frustrated. He got teed up for that. And that's understandable, right? You drive, you're getting hacked and slapped on the arm or bumped and stuff, and you want those calls. And I do think that's a level of, Jaylen Green's game of being able to, I guess, right? Some of the gamesmanship there a little bit, like being able to really sell the call while still finishing the shot, like being able to finish through contact, but also embellishing a little bit to make sure that the refs blow the whistle. That's going to be the next kind of level in his driving game. Is, you know, he's improved considerably as a finisher this season in and around the rim. Now he's got to find ways to be able to manufacture those points. And, you know, if you're going up against an elite defense and you can't really get anything going at the rim, then finding ways to just get to the free throw line, or finding ways to finish and draw the foul and get those and one opportunities to get to the free throw line. Again, even if it's just, you know, falling to the ground a little unceremoniously, like you just got, you know, the snot beat out of you. Maybe that's the way to make the refs ultimately call some of these fouls. I want to highlight here Alperen Sengun, because these slow starts have been killers for the Rockets, man. Like it's inexcusable at this point. I really don't know what goes into it, but Sengun has these games where he's just off to such a slow start. Just like you can't say non-factor, but just some really uninspiring play to start out this game for Alperen Sengun. In the first half of this game, Alperen Sengun was 1 of 4 from the floor, only 2 of 4 at the free throw line. He had 6 rebounds and a steal, but he had 3 turnovers, -6 in 14 minutes. And the Rockets just flat out, they looked better when Alperen Sengun wasn't on the floor. Like when they went small in this game, again, they let Jock Landale play all of 3 minutes. So Jock Landale played that first little 3-minute burst, and then that was it. They played the rest of the game with some combination of like Jabari at the 5, or Jae'Sean Tate at the 5, or Sengun at the 5. But there was a stretch where, like, I just kind of thought to myself, yeah, just leave Sengun on the bench, because if he doesn't want to take this game seriously, then, you know, don't play him, because they're playing better without him on the floor. Now, thankfully, he turned it around. He had a major second half, as he's done a lot this season, where he was able to turn the game around. He finished with 17 points, 7 of 14 shooting, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. I'm sure Ime Udoka lit him up at halftime, talking about his defensive effort, the miscommunications, the blown defensive coverages, and then on top of that, offensively. This is going to be the big, like, next kind of step in Alperen Sengun's evolution. And we talked about this in a recent episode, and yes, some of it is the Rockets have a lot of poor outside shooting. That's just a reality of this team right now. Fred's not hitting things. Jalen's not hitting. Jabari and Dillon are both trending upwards, but there's just, when the guards are struggling so poorly from 3 in this game, they were combined 2 of 13. Fred, 0 of 5. Jalen, 2 of 8. Like, those are really tough numbers to sustain, especially when you have an inside-out presence like Alperen Sengun, who wants to be able to, post up, collapse the defense, and kick it out to shooters. But here's the issue. Understandably, because the Rockets have poor shooters, other teams are more than willing to allow those shooters to take those shots. So they are sending double and sometimes triple teams to Alperen Sengun. They're packing the paint. They're collapsing the defense on top of him. He needs to get better at recognizing when to kick the ball out. There are far too many games as of late, over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and in this one in particular, where he holds the ball for way too long, and he's taking way too long to make a decision, or he'll make a move and it's a predictable, like, okay, he's gonna drive, he's gonna face up, and then he's gonna get to a spin move, and he spins right into, and he's got the ball like right in the lap of a defender, right? Because there's a second defender who showed, and then suddenly he's got 2 defenders, he gets wrapped up, or the ball gets poked away, or he's got a loose handle, or what have you, or 2 or 3 guys, swarm him, and then he's not able to get rid of the basketball. He needs to be a better decision maker in those moments where he's posting up. I don't know what happened to the LP that could facilitate with his eyes closed, or you could put him in a blindfold and he looked like he had eyes in the back of his head. But something's going on where I don't know if he's pressing too hard, if he's thinking, if he's too focused on, okay, I didn't score enough in the first half, so now I really got to try and impact the game. And he's, trying to force the issue too much offensively. But you couple the frustrating turnovers and the inability at times, or the delayed ability to read the double teams that are being sent his way. You couple that with the fact that he's been really inefficient in and around the rim this season. It's just unacceptable levels of play for the guy that, is supposed to be the Rockets' best player. And yeah, he showed up in the second half. awesome. I'm glad that there is something to be said for, I guess, like the resiliency factor, right? Start off the game so poorly, and you could tuck your head and tuck your tail between your legs and hang your head low and be upset with your play and just play like cheeks for the rest of the game. Instead, he turned it around, right? He took some pride in his defense. He had one block in the second half where he like completely sandwiched the ball up against the backboard. It was impressive. He really did turn it around on both sides of the floor in the second half, right? You could see Dillon motivating him. You could see Fred motivating him, right? They were yelling at him. They were trying to get him to lock in defensively. And so that is a good thing to see. But at the end of the day, like, you've got to be able to be a little bit more consistent from the jump, especially because the Rockets need Sengun to be consistent. They can't have these games where he just disappears or is a non-factor for an entire half of play. And thankfully, again, he's been showing up in the second half of these games. But a big part of it is the defensive pressure. And even when other teams aren't double teaming him or collapsing the defense on top of him, and he's taking too long to get rid of the basketball, there are plays where he's just completely nullified because Scotty Barnes or Kelly Olynyk or whoever is fronting him. And it shouldn't be that easy. Like, I remember years ago, like, watching defenses learn that if they fronted Yao Ming, that was the way to keep him from getting the ball and then dominating the game. You fronted him, you had a second defender, the low man, kind of ready to jump in if they overshot the pass, and like, that's how you had to nullify Yao Ming, because nobody could guard Yao Ming one-on-one. Or you had to send two to the ball and force the ball out of his hands. Nobody should be able to front Alperen Sengun as easily as they do. He's not, a 7'6", immovable 300-pound giant. Alp is mobile. He's quick. He's light on his feet a little bit for a big. So, just run something. Like, run something. Almost let one slip there. Run something different to open him up, right? Give him a screen, run a little wedge action, run something with him on the perimeter, a little pick and roll action, and then get him the ball, maybe not all the way down with a true post seal, but the fact that the Rockets went through so many possessions in this game where they literally weren't even able to get the ball to their big man down low to initiate their offense, to collapse the defense, is frustrating in and of itself. And that is an indictment on the coaching staff, the play calling, and finding ways to get their best player the basketball. You cannot just subscribe to the idea of, okay, Scotty Barnes is fronting Sengun, well, I guess we just won't use him this possession. You can't do that. That's just absolutely ridiculous. Coming up, I want to talk about Jabari Smith Jr., his defensive growth and improvement, plus final thoughts from this game. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Built Rewards. Look, if you're a renter, listen up. This is a total game changer. Thanks to Built, you can now earn points on rent payments just like you do with groceries or travel. Paying rent now comes with serious perks, and it's completely free to join. Earn valuable Built points on your rent and everyday spending at no extra cost to you. Redeem points towards flights, hotel stays, and even future rent payments. With over 500 airlines and 700,000 different hotels in their program, the possibilities are truly endless. Access unique experiences that are exclusive to Built members. Look, I wish I had known about this back when I was a renter. I would have absolutely taken advantage of it. It's so easy to turn your rent directly into rewards. If you're already paying rent, why not make it work for you? Start earning points on rent that you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. That's joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. Make sure to use our link so that they know that we sent you. Don't wait. Start earning rewards today. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Look, the NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And FanDuel has so many different ways for you to pick up a dub. You can bet on which players score a touchdown first, or how many different points each team will score. It's exciting stuff. And right now, you can take a look at just the outright Super Bowl favorites this season. The Chiefs sitting at plus 450, right there with the Lions, also plus 450, and the Bills, a three-way tie to win this year's Super Bowl, and the Eagles right behind them at plus 650, and then the Ravens rounding at the top 5 at plus 700. So for all those odds and so much more, head on over to FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, want to share some final thoughts from this Rockets-Raptors game. And I got to start with Jabari Smith Jr. because his defensive play this season in particular, but really just as the season has progressed, we're really starting to see him grow into and become a true rim deterrent, in the sense that his role, right, as we envisioned it back when he got drafted and thinking about how he would fit alongside Alperen Sengun and what he could truly become at the NBA level, you saw a guy who was 6'11", 7 feet tall and thought, okay, great, he's got good length, he's got good size, he should be a solid shot blocking complement to Alperen Sengun, who is, understandably a little bit of an undersized center, in today's NBA. And at the time, there were some serious question marks about Alperen Sengun's defensive capabilities. Now, Sengun has come quite a long way in his own right as well defensively. We've talked about that quite a bit. But for Jabari Smith Jr., he never really had the ups, the athleticism, the hops, whatever, to really be, I guess, considered. Jabari's not a phenomenal athlete, right, compared to some of his peers. But the way that he's been protecting the rim as of late, the shots that he's blocking, the timing on it, where he's using his length, where he's reading where a defender is, where he's coming over from the weak side and pinning shots right against the glass or swatting them all the way out of bounds, like that level of defensive intensity and also the focus and the attention to detail and the timing that it takes to be able to get up and just flat out prevent some easy wide open shots at the rim or layups or what have you. That is fantastic stuff from Jabari, and he really is blossoming and growing as a defensive force right before our eyes, because we know what he can be offensively, right? He's got his sweet spots on the floor in the mid-range, kind of the mid-post, the elbow area. He's trending upwards as a three-point shooter. He's well over 40% over these last 2-3 weeks of play. So he's been phenomenal over this last stretch of games after, there was a point this season where he was shooting only 15% on catch and shoot wide open threes. So we are a long way from that point of the season for Jabari Smith Jr. And again, just seeing what he's able to do defensively, right? His switching is on point. He's able to guard smaller, faster players. He's able to guard bigger players. Ime Udoka has consistently now talked about using him and has really leaned into using him as the backup five quite a bit this season, to where it feels more like Jabari is the true backup center of this team, even more so than either of Steven Adams or Jock Landale. Those two guys still get used sparingly on occasion in certain matchups, but the Rockets truly are at their best, not at their best, but their rotations and their lineups work best when Jabari gets to exit the game a little bit earlier and come back and be the backup five for Alperen Sengun. It makes it a little bit trickier with the substitution patterns, and you got to get a little bit more creative at how you're going to plug and play certain guys over the course of a 48-minute game in order to maximize both having Sengun and Jabari on the court together in tandem, but also having their minutes staggered so that you can get Sengun, obviously, when he's out there playing the five, but then also have the minutes where Jabari's eating up those backup center minutes as the small ball five. He's just been incredible. I really want to, give him a lot of flowers for his defensive presence. And if that trend continues, like that's, we give a lot of props to Alperen Sengun for his growth defensively this season, how he's been able to help anchor one of the best defenses in the NBA. And that takes a lot of effort. Takes a lot of dedication. Other players on the roster like Fred, like Dillon, like Jalen have given Alp his props for his growth defensively. Jabari just kind of quietly does his job every night, right? There's not a lot of flair to his game. He's not going to have a lot of, highlight reel crazy, moments or anything, but Jabari shows up, puts his head down and does his work. 15 points, 4 of 9 shooting, 6 of 6 at the free throw line, 9 rebounds, had a steal and 4 blocked shots in this game. Some great stuff from Jabari Smith Jr. Rounding this one out, man, Fred has been abysmal. And this was his homecoming against the Raptors, because the Rockets did play in Toronto once last season, but Fred was not suited up for that game, so he did receive a tribute video. They still honored him. It was still a homecoming experience for Fred, but he didn't play in the game, and he played in this one, and he didn't play great. Maybe and Ime talked about this post game. Maybe it was, some jitters being back in the arena for the first time since being a part of that Raptors squad, what have you. It's always weird for a guy who's played his entire career for one team to come home and play against that team for the first time. So, not going to hold his feet to the fire too much after this one, but 2 points on just 1 of 10 shooting, 0 of 5 from downtown. He only had the 1 turnover. He did have 8 rebounds. I'll give credit there. And then he had 5 assists, a couple steals. But just, Fred is too important to this Rockets team to be consistently having these performances where he's just kind of a non-factor, not even kind of, was a non-factor offensively. Wasn't hitting shots, had a handful of assists, but how many of those 5 assists were shots that he truly created in the flow of the offense versus just making the right pass to the open man? It's not like Fred is a true drive and kick presence. He's not a guy that's really collapsing the defense and really generating wide open looks for his teammates most of the time. Fred's just a guy out there to be a conductor, right? Make the right read, make sure guys are in the right spots and kind of, read the defense and take what the defense gives you. And, at some point, one or another, I keep telling myself, man, Fred's shot's going to come back. It'll work its way back into form. He can't shoot this poorly all season long. I don't know at this point. We're well over a quarter of the way into the season, and it might just be what it is. If this is just Fred's down shooting season and he's just on the wrong side of 30 now and his, shot percentages are never going back up, then hard conversations are going to have to be had at some point. And, you've got guys, you've got a Thompson waiting in the way. I'm not saying that the Rockets are going to bench Fred or anything, but my hope was that with a guy with his skill set, with his ability to impact the game in a variety of different ways, that he could be a guy that would age out a little gracefully, right? Still be a knockdown shooter, right? You play him in more of an off-ball role, or if the Rockets wanted to, this upcoming offseason, decline his team option and renegotiate a new deal for more years, but way less average annual salary, right? Then maybe he could transition into a backup role, what have you, but Amen Thompson's not ready to run the show yet. His handle's too loose, and he's not seeing the floor as well enough as he needs to consistently to be a full-time guard, which is why he's, still effectively being used as a wing and in the dunker spot and in the corners and whatnot. You still see him run the offense sometimes, but he's not ready for it. Reed Sheppard's certainly not ready to run the show full-time yet. And we've seen what it looks like when Jalen runs the show full-time. There's some nights where it can look really, really good. Then there's other nights where it looks really, really bad, and he also doesn't look ready for it. So the Rockets still need Fred VanVleet to be out there. They just need the stable hand and the calming influence that he provides. But they also need him to be better than 1 of 10 shooting. That's just unacceptable. The reason this game was so close is because Fred, the rest of the Rockets 5 starters, despite an ugly start, despite all the turnovers, right, every single one of them showed up eventually, did their job, right? Sengun did his job, Jalen did his job, Dillon Brooks did more than his fair share of work offensively, kind of making up for some of what Fred didn't do. Jabari did his job. Fred did not show up. And it's a good thing that the other guys brought enough to the table to be able to escape from the win, or escape with the win, I should say, because Fred, with these tour date looking shooting, field goal percentages, is not enough to cut the mustard. He needs to get back to actually knocking down some shots for this Rockets team to be able to play consistently high level basketball. Final note from this one, shout out to Rockets broadcast, Craig Ackerman, who decided to take a shot at Drake after the Rockets won this game. He said that they had slain the Guangdong Dragons. The Rockets had beaten the Guangdong Dragons. And the reason he said that, for the uninitiated, when Fred VanVleet originally signed with the Rockets, Drake and Fred, obviously very close. They also look very similar with their beard and how they style and whatnot. And Drake likes to call him his twin and everything. He commented on Fred's IG post and basically was poking fun at him deciding to sign with the Rockets. He said, "Good luck with the Guangdong Dragons." I mean, the Houston Rockets. So I love that level of pettiness from Craig and the Rockets broadcast. Some of the best in the game between him, my guy Ryan Hollins, and of course Vanessa Richardson on the sidelines. They do fantastic work covering this Rockets team. So just wanted to shout out that fun little moment at the end of this one. Even though it was an ugly game, Rockets barely escaped. They were able to do it and poke some fun at Drake on the way out. I saw some people saying that Kendrick needs to get Craig on a diss track for going up against Drake. I'd pay money to hear that. I truly would. Craig and K-Dot on a track together. Let's get it done. Let's put people in touch, get the Rockets to talk to K-Dot's team. No, I'm kidding. All that to say, good Rockets win. First night of a back-to-back. They got to go take care of business in Charlotte now, a team that they did lose to earlier this season. So hopefully they can enter into Christmas and all the Christmas festivities with a win in Charlotte. Second night of a back-to-back. It's always going to be a little bit harder. We'll have you covered for that game, of course, in our next recap episode. But appreciate you for tuning into the show. Remember, the best way you can help support the show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform you're choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop us a comment while you're there, your favorite moment from the game, what stood out to you about this game, all that good stuff. And also subscribe to the daily Locked On Rockets newsletter. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.